You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? It is Locked On Wild Live here on Sunday, May 5th, a Cinco de Mayo edition of Locked On Wild Live. You know the drill. Hit us with your questions, and we will answer them here as they come in. Fun night for Minnesota sports last night, as the Minnesota Timberwolves got a win in game one of their series against the Denver Nuggets. Man, it is fun to have a player that just takes over. And I know the level of interest in the NBA on this show is probably minimal at best, but it's fun to have a player that just takes over and just refuses to lose. Just some team in Minnesota is inevitably going to win a title, the first one in a long time. And I just hope it happens sooner than later, but man, that was fun last night. Also had game 7 between Boston and Toronto last night, a game that's definitely went both ways. Momentum changed hands, and Toronto again squandered opportunities. Just again cannot rise up past the demons of first rounds past. Boston, though, if I'm Boston, I am considering myself very fortunate to be able to have survived that series, because in game 6 especially, they looked completely overwhelmed, completely timid, and there were points during game 7 where they looked like they were not sure of themselves, but they did what they needed to do. And, you got to have critical pieces step up in the most critical spots. We do have one more game 7 here tonight, as Dallas and Vegas, winner take all, winner advance to round 2. We've got a round 2 series that starts up today here as well, as the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Rangers will square off to determine who advances into the next round. The other matchup in the East is Florida and Boston. We've got one half of the bracket set in the West, Vancouver and Edmonton. That's going to be fun, because I don't think many people are going to give Vancouver a chance considering the injuries that they're dealing with at this point. But I tell you what, they found a way to get past the Nashville Predators. And so that series is going to be a lot of fun. And then whoever ends up winning between Dallas and Vegas, good luck against the Avs. Good luck. You're going to need it, because that Avs team, and I completely wrote them off in round 1. This is the Jets' year. Jets in 5. Yeah, they're good luck to whoever has to go try to contend with that monster, because it's not going to be easy. So if anybody has any questions that you would like answered, just drop them in the comments and we will discuss. I'm doing good, Jay. Just long week, needed a reset, and finally got it yesterday. Just too much going on throughout the week. Finally got it, and so just watched the playoffs again, pretty much all day, and I'm still just buzzing off of that Wolves game last night. At some point, I hope we get an opportunity to see the Minnesota Wild in a similar set of circumstances, because it's so rare in the playoff spectrum here in Minnesota. It's so rare to be the team that just goes and just dictates the tempo, dictates the pace, dictates how the game is going to be played. That this might be the most legitimate chance that a Minnesota team has had at a title since 2009. Every time a Minnesota team has made the postseason, it seems like they are they're overwhelmed by the moment. This is so rare to have a team that is like, you know what? No, the lights aren't too bright. We're going to go take a game. And last night's game too, like the overall theme of just playoffs have momentum. There are momentum swings back and forth, and it's just so rare here in Minnesota to have a team that's like, we're going to go take it. So that I enjoyed that so much, because it runs so opposite of what we typically get here. So I would love if they are the ones that finally breaks this curse, this just abysmal curse that has settled over the entirety of the state. Get a load of this. In the 4 major U.S. sports, the worst all-time playoff series winning percentages, Minnesota teams occupy 3 of the top 11. Minnesota Timberwolves have a .214 winning percentage in postseason series. That's absurdly bad. But hey, the Minnesota Wild are not much better. They're at .235. And then the Minnesota Twins are at .318. Oh, that's so bad. Somebody has to break it. Somebody has to be the one to say enough is enough. Tired of it. Tired of all of the futility. Maybe this year. Maybe this is the year it happens. I wanted to talk a little bit today because the draft lottery is Tuesday. And while the Wild they have a 0% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick, they do have a small chance of moving up. So I wanted to just talk about that a little bit here. So that everybody knows what's going on Tuesday. So let's just talk about this courtesy of the 4-letter network. Let me just roll through this. A set of 14 ping pong balls are placed in a lottery machine, which allows for 1,001 combinations. Each team in the lottery is assigned a set of random 4-number combinations. The worse a team's record, the more combinations they are assigned. So the team with the worst record this past season gets 185, representing an 18.5% chance of winning the first lottery draw. First draw of ping pong balls determines the number 1 pick based on the assigned combinations. A team can move up a maximum of 10 spots in the order. Therefore, if a team in numbers 12 through 16 wins the first draw, they move up accordingly. And the team lowest in the standings slots in at number 1. There is then a second draw to determine the next possible spot using similar rules as the first. Similarly, a team in spots number 13 through 16 can still move up only 10 slots. So they would move up accordingly, and the next lowest available team in the standings would get pick number 2. Regardless of which team wins the draft lottery draws, picks in rounds 2 through 7 are in reverse order of the final standings following the playoffs. So keep that in mind for Tuesday. The Wild can move. I think the furthest the Wild can move up is number 3 based off of that article. So it is possible. It's not likely. It's possible that the Wild could find their way to move up. But if we look at the Tankathon, let's just sim it. Let's just sim the lottery and see what happens. Actually, you know what? Why don't we, let me see if this, let me see if this will work. Hopefully that does. Let me just do some house cleaning here. All right. Let's try this. Let's just play this out. So we got the Tankathon here, and the Wild's currently at 13. Let's just run a sim, see what we get. Just going to stay at 13. It is a 2% chance that the Wilds move up. Let's see how many sims it takes to get there. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's not going to happen, is it? 13, 14, 6. Oh, there we go. On the 16th try, moved up to 3rd. We got it. We did it. So you're telling me there's a chance. It's a slim chance. I would imagine that we're just going to stay at 13. So now who can the Wild get? Oh, I wish that would have stayed up. Who can the Wild get? Let's see what the latest mock draft shows. The Minnesota. Oh. According to the Tankathon, the Minnesota Wild at 13 projected to take Anton Silyev, the 6'7" defenseman from the KHL. Okay. I can work with that. If that is indeed how that plays out. And we are moving to the evals portion of the offseason content as well as draft coverage. We're going to start to really ramp that up here this week. So we'll be doing a lot of profiles on the players that could be. We'll probably do profiles on a bunch of different players, but we'll start with the players that are most likely going to be in the area of 13. And so maybe I'll just start with Anton Silyev. The idea being that once the Wild make their selection in the draft, we've got videos already done that give you a little bit of intel as to what they bring to the table. That's my hope with these. Is that it allows for kind of a circle back to, okay, we drafted this guy. What do we need to know about him? Here you go. I'm just going to The Athletic because I want to see what they say about, oh, this is not what I wanted. I was hoping for, because I think Scott Wheeler just did one. I thought he just did a top prospects ranking. Well, yeah, Silyev is this. He's 6'7", so he would be still somehow shorter than Zdeno Chara, but he still has some skill to bring to the table as well. Also, I'm not gonna lie, folks. Something is going on fascinating. Something fascinating is going on with the Los Angeles Kings. Have you all heard that there is serious discussion being given to buying out Pierre-Luc Dubois? Buying him out a year into his 8-year contract extension seems ill-advised, but dude was awful this year. Listen to this. Even though the Los Angeles Kings acquisition of Pierre-Luc Dubois last July sparked some doubt, not many would have predicted the possibility of separation less than 12 months into an 8-year contract. But the confluence of a dreadful first season, a checkered previous history, a full new move oh boy, I can't talk. A full no move clause that kicks in on July 1st, and Dubois being 25 years old has led to increasing speculation that the Kings will seek to get out of this marriage either through a trade or, much more likely, a buyout. You want to know what that looks like? Because I can tell you, because I looked and then I laughed very loudly at seeing just what this entails. So let's say, because he had I think he had somewhere around 40 points. Let's just look at this. All right. So if you buy him out, right now, he's on the books. His contract was originally on the books until 2030, 2031. Then you tack on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 additional years, or 7 years. He would be on the books for the Los Angeles Kings in some form or fashion until 2037, 2038. Wow. And it's funnier too that the two players that Winnipeg got in return for Pierre-Luc Dubois were major parts of their success. Alex Iafallo was great. He was hurt for a good portion of the season, but he was great. And I forget, Gabe Vilardi was another player that they got in that deal. I think there were other pieces that were involved, but it was those main two players that were involved. Vilardi had 22 goals. Vilardi was the one that was hurt. 22 goals, 36 points in 47 games. So he nearly equaled Pierre-Luc Dubois' output by himself. And then Alex Iafallo had 11 goals, 27 points in 82 games. And then you look at the most previous deal to that between the Kings and the Minnesota Wild. Brock Faber for Kevin Fiala. Well, and Liam Ugrin. So you look at that deal. Anybody want to venture a guess as to what Fiala had in the 5 games against the Edmonton Oilers for points? Anybody venture a guess? Two. He had a goal and an assist in 5 playoff games and was hearing it from the he was hearing it from the fans after that performance. So Los Angeles Kings, this is what happens though, is the Kings were in their window. They view this as their window to contend. And so you bring pieces in, you go all in, but this is what can potentially happen if things don't work out, is there is massive fallout that has to be taken care of on the other ends. Let's go back. Trav had a good question to get things started here. Will Guerin move Rossi to move up in the draft? So your current, who are teams that could use a center? That's the big key. If the thought is that Rossi's going to be used to try to hop up, who is a team that could really use a center at this point? I think one that you definitely could put in, depending on what his value adds to the Wild's current first round pick, would be maybe Arizona, Ottawa. I think those would be 2 spots. Seattle, honestly, too. Seattle would be another spot. If you wanted to try to get inside the top 10 to say 6, 7, or 8, you're going to, I think, and I don't know much, I don't know a ton about, the Islanders are a good, where are the Islanders picking? They're picking at 18, but you could get additional draft capital from them to be able to move up. If you were going to trade Rossi to a particular team, then I would think if you wanted to try to get to 6, 7, or 8, he may be enough to get you there. But again, it depends. If let's say the Wilds, let's say they do luck out. It's a very small percent chance that they do. Let's say they do, and they move up to somewhere inside the top 10. Then maybe you look to, if you are looking to move Rossi, which again, I'm pretty vehemently against. I understand the logic behind it, but I just, point blank, I just think it's dumb. I understand the logic as to why a team would trade Rossi, but I think it's short-sighted myself. If you do move up in the draft, then what you would probably do is just use Rossi to bring somebody in that can play right now. Would be the way that I would do it if I was the one making the decision. So that'd be my guess. In fact, I will I'll put that out there, having no intel of any sort. I just like to throw stuff out there and see what happens. If the Wild don't move up, look for them to maybe, if they want to try to get to that 6, 7, or 8 range. But we'll see what happens. What else do we have here? Little Calder talk I see. Yeah. Kings GM is being held over a barrel with these last 2 trades. And the funny thing about the Kings is, guess what is still an issue for them? The goalie situation. They still have not made any sort of concrete. they have not done a thing to really legitimately address the goalie situation. And so now they're going to have to go out and make another trade to go get a goalie to be able to keep this mix afloat. Like Cam Talbot's a free agent, and I saw some of the games against Edmonton, and that's not great. But then you got David Riddick, who is your backup because Phoenix Copley was on long-term injured reserve. Those guys are all 30 plus. Like you have to do something about your goalie situation, guys. And they have two prospects in their system right now, Eric Portillo and Jacob Ingram. Maybe I know we have discussed quite a bit. See, Dougie he read my mind. He read my mind because we've talked. I have put the Devils up near the top of the list just because they are a team that is in desperate need of goaltending too. You got to put the Kings on that list as well. They are in desperate need for goaltending. They don't have a single goalie prospect under contract in their organization. They don't have a single goalie prospect that they drafted. They traded for one and they signed two others. So they are in desperate need for goaltending, and they're in desperate need of goaltending now. Like they can't afford to wait. That's a team that needs to be looking at actually doing something in the postseason. So definitely put the Kings on the list of teams that the Wild should be discussing for the services of Philip Gustafsson. As far as a return, this will never happen. Could you imagine? Should I even speak it into existence? Should I even? I don't even want to go down this road because, Philip Gustafsson to the Kings for Quentin Byfield. I mean, come on. Because you're I know Gustafsson had a very inconsistent season, but he is still he's a starting goalie at the NHL level, and the Kings are desperate. If you could do something like that for Philip Gustafsson, that would win me back on the Bill Guerin graces. That would be this is something that we're also going to discuss as the offseason rolls along, is the Bill Guerin Goodwill Tour. That would win me back. That would win me back if they could do something like that. A guy who scored 20 goals last season, had 55 points in 80 games. But if you're the Kings, that lineup is pretty full. Other than goalie, you need a goalie. Bookmark that one, folks. Favorite Iowa player for next year. I'm going to be very interested to see what happens with the Iowa Wild, because I think we'll all agree it was a disappointing season, to say the least. Inconsistencies, just a lot of, and they did deal with being a shuttle service for the Minnesota Wild, essentially, with all the injuries the Wild had. So there were a lot of guys that they were expecting would play huge roles on that Iowa team that just weren't there. So that's part of it. But I just want to see, a leap from one of these. I want to see a leap from one of the defenseman prospects this year. I need to see big things from whether it be Carson Lambos or Kyle Masters, Ryan O'Rourke. I'll throw David Spacek in there too. Even Jack Pert. I need to see something. I need to see a big jump from one of those guys. I didn't include Damon Hunt, or maybe I did. I can't even remember. Because he is, I think, the top of the list of those players. I want to see somebody knock on the door to a spot on the NHL roster this upcoming season. There's got to be just a refocus or a reorganization and a priority put on development in the lower levels. Like, they just need to really be instilling in these guys what they need to do to get to the NHL level, and then give them the tools to do that at Iowa. Now, it's an incredibly young D-core, so there are growing pains, and I think the fact that there just wasn't really anybody to lead them, I think, is part of it. So I'm going to, of that group, I'm just going to pick Jack Pert. I'm just going to pick him and hope that he is the one that kind of takes the lead. But honestly, I will be very happy if any of those guys makes a step forward this upcoming season. And, from a forwards perspective too, you've got a bunch of guys that are capable. I'm intrigued by not only Toporowski, but some of the other guys. Caden Bankier is another one that is intriguing. It's just, I just want to see steps forward. I'm a big results. Like, you put in the time and you see the results. I'm a big results guy. So I want to see some steps forward for these guys, because the Wild are going to need them in the near future, and that near future could be as early as the beginning of the season, because everything that you hear is that Jared Spurgeon is going to be ready for the start of the season. Everything you hear says that. I will not believe it until I see it. I just won't. It's too much. It's too much surgery to try to come back from and not have potential setbacks. So if he does, awesome. But I myself just am going to be cautious in that regard. Because a hip and a back surgery in the same offseason, that's not nothing. Like, I haven't had any types of surgeries, but I can only imagine the rehab that is taken in order to get yourself back and ready. So they need these guys to be able to step in and help as soon as possible. For the size category, Trav, current tallest defenseman is a tie between Ryan O'Rourke and Simon Johansson at 6'2". Jack Pert is 5'11". Will Butcher, who was acquired, I think, in the Pat Maroon trade, if I remember correctly, he's 5'10". Brendan Miller is 6'1". David Spacek is 6 foot. Kyle Masters is 6 foot. Carson Lambos is 6'1". Damon Hunt is 5'11". So getting the likes of Anton Silyev would immediately change that. 6'7". Zdeno Chara. Zdeno Chara was like 6'10", wasn't he? Something insane like that. What was it? 6'9". My God. That is just absurdly high. He's 47. I bet he could still play if given the opportunity. I bet he could still play. This is the one. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. I can't even pronounce the I'm not even going to try to say the last name, but that was the trade I was thinking of. Kind of a minor league swap. And really done, I think, because Murmas was supposed to be the captain in Iowa, but he played basically the entire season with Minnesota. And so it was just to have somebody to kind of lead the defensive prospects around and show them the way. Toporowski was for Pat Maroon. Thank you. Yeah, Chara played just so. Chaykovich. Thank you. He played a long time. He played just a long time in the NHL. I just want to pull up his. Yeah, he played till he was 44. He played 72 games with the New York Islanders at 44 years old. "72 games as a 44-year-old. Get out of here. That's just absurd. Unreal. He would be better at 47. He'd be better at 47 than I would have been at 25. It's unreal that he played as long as he did. Yeah, this is the other thing. That we like is that he has some skating ability to him. So he's got skill with size. That is why this being a tiny roster is not an easy fix, because you got to find guys that have skill and size to be able to throw into the mix. Oh no. Canada about to beat USA 6-4. Gavin McKenna with the hat trick. Sad eyes. Kaprizov got a little Jaromir Jagr in him. I like that. Shall we look up Jaromir Jagr's stats? 1991 to 2018? He played so long. He started at 18. He had 27 goals as an 18-year-old in 1991. He was playing until he was 45. Good Lord. Had some insane seasons too. 24 years, 766 goals, 1,921 points. Played 22 games with Calgary as a 45-year-old. He had 16 goals as a 44-year-old. If the Wild trade Gus and Jesper is up to the NHL, what will the Iowa Wild have? Well, thankfully, the Wild did make a couple of minor signings for that exact reason. But the names, Samuel Levi Samuel Levi was one of those guys that was signed to an ELC. And so I would imagine he will get a ton of playing time in Iowa next season. If Jesper is indeed up at the NHL level, I would imagine then Levi will be your starter in Iowa. I think the Zane McIntyre, Zane McIntyre tenure is probably over, but Hunter Jones, who is a restricted free agent, maybe he ends up getting signed to a couple year extension to stay in the organization. But not only that, the Wild did also, they signed, who was it? They signed another goalie too, that I think was from Wisconsin, who you would think would also be in the mix in Iowa for next year. But yeah, as Dougie points out, that does tend to lead you to believe that Jesper will not be part of the mix in Iowa. So take that for what you will, and what that means for Gus. So here's another good question for Philip Gustafsson. If you are indeed going to trade him, what are you getting for him? There are a couple of different ways to kind of go about this. Draft pick, I think, is the easiest to quantify, because you just say, like, a second round pick or a second or third round pick. You probably do that deal immediately. But this is where, if you have a couple of teams that are desperate for goaltending, that you can, I think, up it to asking for a player in return. Now, I think if you were going to, like, as much as I would just drool over the possibility of Quentin Byfield, you would probably have to throw something in to sweeten that slightly. But this is what you're hoping happens, is that teams like the Devils, teams like because let's look at the free agent options for the goalie position and just see what the potential is there. All right, update results. Here are your goaltending options if you are a team that is looking for a legitimate starter. You got Matt Murray, Ilya Samsonov he's getting closer. Jeremy Swayman is a restricted free agent, so I would imagine Boston gets something done there. But beyond that, you've got, Casey DeSmith is a backup. Kevin Lankinen is a backup. Pavel Francouz, who I think I'd read had there was some goalie on the list that actually retired. But anyway, you get a bunch of backups on the free agent market. So it's going to be easier to find a backup than it is to find a starter, unless you go the route of like Scott Wedgwood, Anthony Stolars. Yeah, thank you, Jay. That's what I thought, that it was Francouz. That's unfortunate that he had to retire due to injury, but that's the one that Trav, that's the one with Frank Langella as Skeletor, right? I know which one you're talking about. It's one of those that you just like can't stop watching. Kyle McClellan. Thank you. See, this is why I just throw stuff out here, and the listeners do a good job of finding it if I can't. Kyle McClellan from the University of Wisconsin was the other goalie that was signed. So I would imagine those guys will be in the mix for Iowa, and it'll be Jesper at the NHL level. Gus in a 2026 third for Mikey Anderson. I think I talked about Anderson at one point because the name is familiar. Let me just pull it up here and let's see what we're working with here. Ooh, that's right. 24-year-old defenseman. And he's one of us. He's from Roseville. His cap hit is 4.125. And pretty durable. Okay, I'll look into Mikey Anderson a little bit more. Because I probably should start to do some like potential suitors for Gustafsson. Should probably start to do a few of those episodes here to throughout the offseason as well. So I'll dig into that a little bit. Another great question here from Shonius Maximus. What does Russo mean when he says they can bury Merrill's salary in the minors? So you could basically, if I have it correct, you can send Merrill to Iowa, and a portion of that contract, like I think it's 1 million of the 1.2 million, would come off the books. Would open up some cap space. You can't send the whole contract down there because he is currently signed to a 1-year deal. I think is how that essentially plays out. So that would be a route if the Wild wanted to, but they could also just like they can kind of see what the trade market is too. Depending on if somebody suffers an injury, like this was the exact same situation as to how Dmitry Kulikov was traded a few seasons ago. He was traded in like August because the Anaheim Ducks, I guess, had a need. And so they traded Kulikov to the Anaheim Ducks in like August. So that would be a route as well. Honestly, if he ends up, if you can't find a suitor for him, if he ends up as the 7th defenseman, I mean, I guess so be it. But I would, I don't know. I'd rather be done. If I blew my back out, I still wouldn't trade for Merrill to fill it. McClellan and Coralville with Peyton Jones backing Levi. That's probably the route that they go. No, that Merrill jersey will never run out of use. That is an item of Discord server lore, right there. So don't get rid of that thing ever. In fact, frame it and display it somewhere proudly. That John Merrill got enough points that you ended up having to buy his jersey. Display that thing with pride. Let's see here. Oh, I was going to get to this one from Alaskan Wampa. Think we'll pick up another goalie in this draft somewhere. I would be very in favor of that. If the Wilds end up using one of their later picks, I would not. It's like quarterbacks in the NFL drafts. Like I'm never not going to be in favor of just seeing if you can find kind of a late round gem, because you've got Jesper. The expectation is that he's going to be the guy of the future, but that future is not going to be forever. And even if you don't trade, if you don't trade Philip Gustafson, Marc-Andre Fleury will not be back next year. And Philip Gustafson's deal is 2 years. There are 2 years remaining on that deal. So he's not going to be around forever. So it just makes sense to just try to, it's like insurance policies for these different spots on the roster. It would be a wise decision in my mind if they elect to go that route, because like he's just even if I forgot what I was going to say. You need insurance policies for Jesper too, because injuries happen. So it's possible that you would need somebody to fill in for him. So I think it's a great idea to look to just add a goalie and see if you can hit on somebody later on in the draft to complement hitting on Jesper in the first round. Who do you think will be in the lineup more consistently this year based on the end of season performances? Who's Nadinov or Ugrin? This is a good question. Honestly, I see no reason that both players can't be in the lineup. Based off of how they played this last season. Obviously, who's Nadinov being a center, I would tend to, I'll say he probably plays more consistently because he's penciled in at a center spot, and unless he gets hurt, I think that third line center spot is his. So I'll say who's Nadinov, but there's no reason that Liam Ugrin doesn't get a ton of play this year. I think he should be in the lineup every day too. But for the question, I'll say who's Nadinov because the center position is a more important role, and he's filling it. So I'll say who's Nadinov there. We just have to hope that Marcus Johansson has like honestly, this would be just fine. I would be just fine with seeing both guys get an opportunity to kind of gel. I'd be very fine with that. This is the key points. Like, this is the key thing, is there just were too many players that were simply taking up space this past season. Like, you need to have players on the roster that can give you upside, like give you something. And it doesn't have to be scoring. Give you something other than they play hard. Playing hard should be non-negotiable for everybody on the roster. Like, you need players to either score or to be really, really good on defense to the point that they can slow down the opponent. That's really what it boils down to. At least from my perspective, is just like either you give in the scoring department or on defense, or your hope is that these guys give both. That's the optimistic part of the equation. I feel like this team needs spots they call their own, especially the young kids. Yeah, you want to, I think, for their development, give them a role. if third line center is going to be Murat Huznadinov's spot this year, make that his spot so that he can own that role. And if he plays better, if he impresses, like if he plays above what that role asks, don't be afraid to reward him. This is one of the separators between John Hines and Dean Evison from last year. It's one of the great separators between the two. I feel like John Hines does that more for the most part. There were some exceptions. Marcus Johansson continuing to find his way into the second line. But I think he does a better job of having a feel for what's going on during the game. And if a group of players is playing really, really well, okay, let's try this out. Don't be afraid to reward players for playing well, and don't be afraid to bump players down that are not, because we saw plenty of that this past season. So don't be afraid to let the kids take over. Back up what you say. Dougie's absolutely right here. You put it out there. You put out the notion of, we would love for these prospects to take the jobs of the veterans. Okay, so back it up. Back your words up. If they play well enough to take spots in the lineup, let them do it. Let them do it. Interesting note on Mason Shaw. I was listening to, I think it was Worst Seats in the House. Mason Shaw is only going to return, according to Russo. Mason Shaw is only going to return to the Wilds if he accepts a two-way contract. There is the potential, much like with Dakota Mermis, there's potential that he ends up getting an NHL deal somewhere else. And it doesn't sound like the Wild are super inclined to match that, if that's the case. It would be unfortunate. He's a fan favorite, but the reality of the situation is that there are spots in the lineup that you just got to start seeing what these prospects are capable of. Like you just have to start trying guys in these particular spots. So if somebody gives Shaw a one-way contract, he's likely going to take that, and I don't think the Wild will match it, at least based off of what Russo said. And, the rest of the bunch, Jake Lucchini, and Vinny Lettieri, I saw enough. Lettieri was a fun, kind of a feel-good story at points, but I want guys in the lineup that are producing. That's the bottom line. I want guys in the lineup that are producing one way or the other. And for the most part, that bottom six was invisible the entire back end of the season. So that's kind of what I expect to happen there. Yeah. Beyond that, I think we're going to wrap it here for today. For the week, we'll still have our standard Monday episode with Alex coming up tomorrow. Got a couple of things that we will get to, as well as player evals. We're going to start player evals and draft profiles, and we'll mix in with Gustafsson trade talk and a few other nuggets as well. So the off-season content bus continues to roll here at Locked on Wild. So make sure that you don't miss out and subscribe so you can catch our episodes on a daily basis, as well as these live shows throughout the off-season too. We have you covered with new episodes every Monday through Friday. Thanks everybody for joining today's Locked on Wild Live. We'll catch you for tomorrow's episode of Locked on Wild. We are your team every day, and we've got new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.